How many of you know about Savitri? Know something about Savitri? Savitri was written as a story in the Mahabharata, the great Indian legend, of a king who has no child, and he implores the divine to give him a child, and that child he names Savitri. Now, Sri Aurobindo has taken that small story and he has created the most extraordinary epic ever. But it's not just about Savitri, because he makes Savitri the Divine Mother. And the Divine Mother is the one who comes to the earth and saves mankind from the darkness. Now, Sri Aurobindo is speaking of himself, but he uses Ashwapati as his character in Savitri. And since you're all new, except my dear friend here, I'm going to give you a little bit more understanding of Savitri, because in the beginning there was no Big Bang. The creation of the world was through the transcendent divine presence. We can call it God if we will. Doesn't matter what we call it. And that divine presence, that transcendent, decides to create life. And he sends down a pure power that is called the highest power, the most sacred power, and that involution creates the evolution, and the evolution is where we are. We are living now in the ignorance. The ignorance is the body, the life, and the mind. We have to grow out of that, but it's a very slow process of evolution, because evolution itself has to take in every aspect of duality. We see things as hot and cold, as good and bad, as love and hate, but in the highest realms, that does not exist. They are all compatriots or comrades or identifications of the same thing in a slightly different way. So, where we have to go is a long way. And that way is through the evolutionary cycles of many, many births. One great yogi has said that each of us who are here now has had 100,000 births and deaths to get here. So we should be grateful that we are here at a time when the avatars came down, that is the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and just as previous avatars brought something new to the world, Krishna, Christ, Buddha, Rama, so many of them brought love, brought peace, but none of them accepted what Sri Aurobindo has seen, and that is that the earth is to be the home of the Lord, of the divine. And so he said, you may have all these great realizations, and you may realize mukti, you may realize peace, total peace, but don't stop there. When you have achieved that peace, come back down and help to transform this earth. That is what brought me here to meet the Mother 65 years ago. So, to begin, I guess the best thing is for me to read some pages for you of Savitri. And we ended, before my illness came, on page 80. And I'm going to go back today to Book 1, Canto 4, which is so very important. And you'll hear a little bit from Canto 4. It's Book 1, the Book of Beginnings. And in this Book of Beginnings, we have already gone through the creation of the world. And turn to page 46, at the very first line. It is so important. Now, Sri Aurobindo is using Ashwapati as his other name. And we hear first that Ashwapati is standing on this great height. On a height he stood that looked towards greater heights. So he's already achieved total silence, complete peace. He's met with the divinity. There's still more, there'll be a Canto 5 too, but we're going to look at Canto 4 a little bit. Now, Sri Aurobindo is going to speak about us. All of us, each of us. Our early approaches to the infinite are sunrise splendors on a marvelous verge, while lingers yet unseen the glorious sun. What now we see is a shadow of what must come. The earth's uplook to a remote unknown is a preface only of the epic climb of human soul from its flat earthly state to the discovery of a greater self and the far gleam of an eternal light. Yes, we are in the ignorance. We have been born in the ignorance because we had previously been with the divine completely, and we decided to take that plunge into what we call the darkness or the ignorance. And now we have to work our way out through the evolution to something higher, greater, purer, better, more powerful. So we look at these lines again. We have an early approach to the infinite. I can say that for myself. My approach to the infinite is still early. And we see these sunrise splendors. Sometimes we have a vision. Sometimes we have a dream. Sometimes we have something that touches us that we never knew before. Something so beautiful, something so magical. And all of us have experienced it. Maybe in sleep. I experienced it once when I fell on the ground and knocked myself out. And I remember hearing my mother saying, "Get up and get to work." And that woke me up out of my dream. But I have heard the music of the spheres. And once you have heard that music, no music on earth can even come near it. And so when we have the Om choir at 5:30, you will begin to hear what is possible, because you will all be in a sacred space. You see, we are already divine, only we've covered ourselves with so many different veils. Veils of family, education, environment, work, we could go on and on. And those veils have to be torn, rent, so that we can see once the divinity in this world. So, what does Sri Aurobindo say about this last line, and the far gleam of an eternal light? Well, it's a most beautiful, beautiful quote that I will share with you. Our sense, by its incapacity, has invented darkness. In truth, there is nothing but light. Only it is a power of light, either above or below our poor human vision's limited range. For do not imagine that light is created by the suns. The suns are only physical concentrations of light, but the splendor they concentrate for us is self-born and everywhere. God is everywhere, and wherever God is, there is light. So there's truly no darkness. I had a friend from Russia who escaped communism. and lived in the ashram to the age of 100. And Mother wrote the following to him: "The light is everywhere. The force is everywhere. And the world is so small." So, it gives you a sense of this eternal light. So we continue on. This world is a beginning and a base, where life and mind erect their structured dreams. What is life? Most of us have no idea what life is. So Sri Aurobindo tells us that life is a universal force working so as to create, energize, maintain, and modify, even to the extent of dissolving and reconstructing substantial forms. And then life, of course, is a growth of the soul out of the darkness towards the light. But what is mind? Sri Aurobindo wrote thousands of replies to disciples and devotees who wrote to him asking thousands of questions. So what is the mind? Well, in one of his letters on yoga, he writes, "The mind, in the ordinary use of the word, covers indiscriminately the whole consciousness, for man is a mental being and mentalizes everything." I don't think any of us could disagree with that. Thoughts come into our mind that are not our thoughts, but we take them. The yogis do not allow the thoughts to come in. They keep the mind silent. Or some of them let it pass through and nothing lingers. So, Sri Aurobindo, "For man is a mental being and mentalizes everything. But in the language of this yoga, the words mind and mental are used to connote specially the part of the nature which has to do with cognition and intelligence, with ideas, with mental or thought perceptions, the reaction of thoughts to things. Mind in its essence is a consciousness which measures, limits, cuts out forms of things from the indivisible whole and contains them as if each were a separate integer. When we achieve the growth into the spiritual dimensions of experience that begin with a leap above the mind to the higher mind, and from the higher mind to the illumined mind, from the illumined mind to the intuitive mind, from the intuitive mind to the overmind, and from the overmind to the supermind. And this is what Mother and Sri Aurobindo brought down to the earth. Sri Aurobindo called it the supramental, or the real idea, or the truth consciousness. So our mind is limited because we see everything in dual terms. We see hot and cold. We see rain, we see cyclones, we see all kinds of turbulences, but it's still water. It can be a glass of water, it can be the ocean, but we limit everything, and that's what Sri Aurobindo is telling us here. So I will go on. And then this most powerful word, an unborn power must build reality. Now he's going to tell us more what we really are. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. Immortal, our forgotten vastnesses await discovery in our summit selves. So when we can arise higher and higher in consciousness, we will see these immortal and forgotten vastnesses. Already, science has made a breakthrough. They now accept that consciousness has built the world. That was unheard of 20, 30 years ago. No, life came from matter. How did it come? Well, we don't know, but we're looking into it. But no, it is we use the term divine creatrix, or the mother, the divine mother, who has built all these worlds and looks after them, as she looks after each of us. And if you can go deep enough within yourself, you may be able to feel her presence in you. I tell you this very seriously, because I have been with the Mother many times. There is what Sri Aurobindo has termed a psychic being. And that psychic being is in the center of the chest, behind the heart. And all of us have that psychic being. But it's asleep right now, and we have to awaken it. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. Immortal, our forgotten vastnesses await discovery in our summit selves. Unmeasured breadths and depths of being are ours. Akin to the ineffable secrecy, mystic, eternal, unrealized in time, neighbors of heaven are nature's altitudes. So when nature rises and realizes she is divine, she will be a neighbor of heaven. Now, how does this occur? Well, I spoke about the involution, the perfection that the divine has brought down, which has created the evolution in all things. First of all, in the unicellular organisms, then in the worm, in the snail, in the smaller creatures, then in the plant consciousness. And there have been so many studies that tell us that plants have a consciousness of a sort. They know when another plant is being harmed. And 2 Americans wrote the book about that. And an Indian, Bose, also studied music on plants. And interestingly, he found that some plants liked jazz and other plants liked classical music. And he experimented, I think it was tomatoes that liked jazz. Anyway, we move on. Neighbors of heaven are nature's altitudes. To these high-peaked dominions, sealed to our search. Yes, of course, they're sealed to our search right now, because we've not opened sufficiently to attain that consciousness that sees it. Too far from surface nature's postal routes, too lofty for our mortal lives to breathe. Deep in us, a forgotten kinship points. I spoke of the psychic being, and deep in us, that forgotten kinship is there. None of us are without it. And a faint voice of ecstasy and prayer calls to those lucent, lost immensities. Now, this is most important, these next 3 lines. We've all done unconscious things, bad things, but we have to be careful with that use of bad. I don't like to use it. But, okay, we've taken drugs, or we've drunk alcohol too much, or things like that. Even when we fail to look into our souls, or lie embedded in earthly consciousness. What does embedded mean? Oh, we hear it on the television all the time. These journalists were embedded in this place where a war was going on. Even when we fail to look into our souls, or lie embedded in earthly consciousness, still have we parts that grow towards the light. We should never forget that. Never forget that. Whatever we may have done in the past, yes, we are going to work it out through karma, or fate, as they say in the West. But we still have parts that are quietly growing towards the light. What hope in that line. Such great hope. So he tells us that there are luminous tracks, and there are these heavens serene, and there are El Dorados of splendor and ecstasy. El Dorado, who knows what that means? El Dorado. Well, it's sort of a mythical thing, because in South America, the 16th century explorers were looking for gold, El Dorado. So, El Dorados of splendor and ecstasy. I have to go to the next page, page 47. and temples to the Godhead none can see. And now this very, very, very important passage. A shapeless memory lingers in us still. And sometimes, when our sight is turned within, earth's ignorant veil is lifted from our eyes. There is a short, miraculous escape. This narrow fringe of clamped experience we leave behind, meted to us as life. Meted means distributed or allotted to us as life. Our little walks, our insufficient reach. And then there's a full stop there, because he says, our souls can visit in great lonely hours still regions of imperishable light, all-seeing eagle peaks of silent power and moon-flame oceans of swift, fathomless bliss and calm immensities of spirit space. In the unfolding process of the self, sometimes the inexpressible mystery elects a human vessel of descent. And the human vessels are what we call in India the avatars, or the vibhutis. Vibhutis are not quite avatars, but they have great power. Abraham Lincoln was a vibhuti. Of course, Ramakrishna was a realized soul. There are many, many vibhutis that have appeared in our lives and changed the movement of the earth to a higher response. Sometimes the inexpressible mystery, all these mysteries are inexpressible. We cannot define them, we have to realize them. And we can. We have the capacity. The self, capital S, or soul, capital S, in us is pure, is perfect, is all-powerful. But it stays above this ordinary life. It's always there. We go back to it when we pass away. But the psychic being, the evolving soul, is what we have to find in our exploration of our own bodies. Sometimes the inexpressible mystery elects a human vessel of descent. A breath comes down from a supernal air. A presence is born. A guiding light awakes. Oh, Sri Aurobindo has so much to tell us about this. In a letter on yoga, he says, one must have faith in the master of our life and works, even if for a long time he conceals himself. Interesting. And then, in his own right and time, he will reveal his presence. And here Sri Aurobindo gives us very clearly the difference between the psychic being and the divine presence. They, the psychic being and the divine presence in the heart, are quite different things. The psychic being is one's own individual soul being. It is not the divine, though it has come from the divine and develops towards the divine. For it is quietness and inwardness that enable one to feel the presence. When the mind is too active, too busy, when the vital nature is filled with desire, filled with problems, we cannot feel the presence. We cannot even hold the silence. So he writes, beyond mind, on spiritual and supramental levels, dwells the presence, the truth, the power, the bliss that can alone deliver us from these illusions, display the light of which our ideals are tarnished disguises, and impose the harmony that shall at once transfigure and reconcile all the parts of our nature. So, what are these parts of our nature? Well, we have a body. We have a vital nature, a life force, and we have a mind. These are the three things that distinguish us as the ignorance. And when we rise above them, as I told you before, we go into the spiritual realms of consciousness. Here's a quote from the Divine Mother. For in human beings, here is a presence, the most marvelous presence on earth, except in a few very rare cases, which I need not mention here. This presence lies asleep in the heart, not in the physical heart, but the psychic center of all beings. And when this splendor is manifested with enough purity, it will awaken in all beings the echo of his presence. And I'll read just a few more lines, because our time is up. A stillness falls upon the instruments, fixed, motionless, like a marble monument, stone calm. The body is a pedestal, supporting a figure of eternal peace. And that eternal peace tonight I invoke to be with each of you, that it may descend into your being along with calm, along with aspiration, and of all things, along with love. And I'll close with this last quote from the Mother. It is true that consciousness created the world, but love is its savior.